Today we're going to stay on this series for home sellers, and we're going to discuss what happens if you improperly terminate a home sales contract with a buyer, and we're going to get started right now. Hello and welcome back to All Things Knoxville with me, Ben Barredo, your local real estate pro and relocation expert for East Tennessee. Before we jump into today's video, I want to remind you I make videos like this every Monday. At least I release them every Monday. So if you like this content, if you want more of it, if you don't mind a realtor making a video every once in a while with a t-shirt on, then give me a like, hit the subscribe button. Maybe share this video with someone that may enjoy it or find it useful or helpful in their life. Lastly, of course, if you're thinking of moving, buying, selling, investing, I'd love to help you out. Whether you're in Tennessee, whether you're somewhere in the country, I'm sure I can help you out with your questions, with information, maybe point you in the right direction. Feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, go sign up on my website and search homes while you're there. Look at what's available in Tennessee. I help people across the country every single day, and I would love to help you too. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump into today's video topic. So the last 2 weeks, we discussed some different scenarios for those of you smart enough to take advantage of this seller's market. If you want to check out those videos, you can just click right here, or you can follow the link in the description, or click here. I don't remember what site that's going to pop up on. The first week we talked about how and when a homeowner gets paid when their house sells and they go to closing. And then last week we discussed legal ways to get out of a purchase and sales agreement with a buyer. But what happens if you try to cancel a purchase and sale agreement with a buyer, but the methods that you are using are questionable or maybe not advised? Well, today I'm going to talk about just that and what you can expect if things go wrong. If the seller breaches a contract or backs out improperly, they could face some serious consequences. The buyer could sue you, the listing agent could sue you, or honestly the buyer's agent could also sue you for the same reasons, and the seller may have trouble finding new buyers in the future. So first, let's talk about if the buyer wanted to sue the seller. So if a seller breaches a contract with a buyer, they can sue you for monetary damages or force you to complete the home sale. Let's discuss monetary damages real quick. The buyer will most likely sue the seller, for monetary damages, and if the buyer wins, you could owe them compensation for expenses, basically the expenses they incurred during the sales process. And as a result of the breach contract, you could be paying for inspection costs, appraisal costs, as well as more. State laws determine what specific costs the buyer can recover, and they're generally eligible for compensation for expenses like temporary housing costs, due diligence expenses, court fees. However, in some places, the buyer may be able to sue for additional compensation damages, especially if it's clear that the seller acted in bad faith. So if a seller gets cold feet and tries to back out of a contract with the buyer, and the buyer decides to sue them for specific performance, and if the seller loses the lawsuit, the court will force them to comply with the contract and sell the house. Specific performance lawsuits are less common than monetary damages because most buyers don't want to halt their relocation plans indefinitely while the case is in court. But still, the agent also can sue the seller. So let's talk about that real quick. If the buyer has grounds for a lawsuit, then it's more than likely that the seller's real estate agent does too. And the agent's broker may take the seller to court to compel them to pay the compensation or the commission that they would have collected on the sale of the home had it gone through properly. And if the listing agent doesn't sue you, then more than likely the buyer agent probably will, because they're also missing out on money that they should have received. Honestly, that's right. The seller may have to pay realtor commissions even if they don't actually sell their home. And remember, this could happen whether you sell your home with a realtor or not. If you're a for sale by owner and you still did things illegally, you'd still be owing the compensation and be subject to these same consequences. Listen, listing agreements, the contract that sellers sign with their agent's brokerage when they list their house, typically stipulates that sellers owe realtor commission if the property attracts a willing and able buyer. So as long as the buyer fulfilled their contractual obligations up until the seller breached the purchase agreement, then a court would more than likely be on the side of the agents and the buyers and force the seller to pay whatever commission they agreed to, and that's usually anywhere from 3% all the way up to 6, 7, 8% depending of the sales price for the negotiated buyer. That could be anywhere from an average of $5,000 all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars depending on the price of the house. The seller could have a hard time selling the house again as well. The buyer could file a legal claim against the seller, putting a lien on their property, which is obviously going to make it very, very hard and very expensive to sell your house to future buyers. If the buyers sue the sellers, then they're likely going to file a legal notice called a lease pendings on the property to publicize that the home's title is subject to ongoing litigation. It's difficult to sell a home with the lease pendings, especially for market value. The new owner would become liable for the result of the lawsuit, and few buyers want to assume that kind of risk and responsibility. And if the prospective buyer needs financing, they'll probably be unable to secure the loan approval until the lease pendings is removed. So that is going to be an added expense to the seller, who will incur the cost if they try to sell to get that off the title. Well, what to do if you're considering backing out of a contract with a buyer? Listen, unless you have a contingency that authorizes you to terminate the purchase agreement, it's probably not worth it. I don't care if you detest the buyers. The risk to back out of a contract to chase a better offer or whatever is not going to be worth it. There may be situations where it makes sense to call off a sale, such as an unexpected job loss, changes in your plans, a death in the family, or the buyer might switch to a new lender and it costs you, the seller, more money than originally agreed to. There are ways to cancel a contract, or at least force a buyer to go back to the initial lender or the initial offer and follow through. However, even then, you could still face serious consequences if you back out of the contract the wrong way. If you're considering trying to get out of a real estate contract, I recommend that you do the following. First, take a step back and assess your motivation and your motives honestly. Evaluate your options to get out of the sale, if any, and then decide whether it's worth the potential financial, legal, and other consequences, as well as the headache. Consult with a realtor or a real estate attorney before doing anything you might regret. Few home sellers make it through a sale without having second thoughts at some point during the process. But remember, seller's remorse is usually temporary and easily shaken off. Lawsuits, however, not so much. Well, listen, that's it for today's video. I hope you found it helpful and somewhat entertaining. Stay tuned to next week's when I share ways sellers might be able to persuade buyers to cancel a purchase agreement without using any contingencies in the contract that are mostly there to protect the buyer anyway. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you next week. And for now, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.